So, Sean, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, Bob, that's easy. I want to talk about the need to stop the development of self-driving cars.
Again, Sean, you're driving me nuts. I think the self-driving car thing's already out of the gate.
No. It's never too late. See, now the leading experts in the field, I mean, just pick one, whichever one, leading experts have repeatedly warned us about the dangers of artificial intelligence. Look, I'm telling you, man, we have to stop the robots by any means necessary.
I see what you did there.
Yep.
Tune into our show By Any Means Necessary daily from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Radio Sputnik. And don't forget to call in at 3:20 p.m. to our studio number 202-521-1320.
And if you miss us live, check us out on SputnikNews.com, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date on the latest political, social, and economic movements shaping the world around us.
Welcome back to Political Misfits on Radio Sputnik, where we bring you news, politics, and culture without the red and blue treatment. I'm Michelle Whitty here with Bob Schleihuber, bringing you our Trends with Benefits segment, in which we look at the latest trends and decide whether they are friend or foe. And Bob and I are very glad to be joined by the man who might have coined the name of this segment. I can't actually remember. I think it might have been you. I'm talking, of course, about Jamarl Thomas, co-host of Fault Lines on Radio Sputnik and host of the Progressive Soapbox on YouTube, and one-time co-host of this show. So it's nice to have you back in the afternoon, Jamarl.
It is very weird. It is very weird. You know, it's funny. Garland comes on the show sometimes, right? And it's always awkward when he comes on the show because it's like, oh, man, this feels so weird. Yeah, this feels bizarre. But, hey, glad to be here.
Is it your nap time usually?
Yeah. Well, no. We're still like pulling guests and stuff like that, or just doing news. Like, because I still do my own show. It's like, so after the radio show, usually I may take like a little bit of break and then just come back and find stories and continue. But no, it just kind of depends on the day. But so no, it's no issue. It just feels weird being on, hearing you give the intro. And hearing, like, it's like, that sounds weird. But you sound great. And I told you
it's
that
great
was
to have you.
Yeah, you
Beautiful
sound
circle of life.
Yeah. But like I said, I told you once before, you sound phenomenal on the radio. I was driving home one day back, and it just so happened that radio was on, and I was like, wow, who is this? I was like, I think that's Michelle. This is Political Misfits. I was like, and I sent you an email that day. I was like, hey, great job.
It was really, it was nice. I have to say, I think I look pretty good on YouTube too. That's, that's saying. No, wait, Jamarl, speaking of beautiful circles, we of course have you on right now to catch us up on trends in the UFO world. And I have a few thoughts for you, but I'm going to let you just kick it off in general. You know, there was a burst of disclosure toward the end of the Trump administration. And so I wonder where that's gone. Has anything exciting been gleaned from it? And are there any efforts underway to press Biden to continue that?
So that's a good question on Biden. Let's start with the Trump thing. And let's go back a little bit further than Trump. Let's say that Hillary Clinton wanted to open up the UFO files. Let's say she did. Now, she was walking around with UFO books. She was caught with them. It wasn't by accident. It's like, oh golly gee, you caught me with this book. It wasn't that. It was very clear that she wanted to be caught with the book. John Podesta was her person. Podesta had been trying to get the UFO files for God knows how long. He openly has said it on more than one occasion. Even at a press briefing at one point, not getting my hands on those files was the greatest failure in this administration, something to that effect. She wanted to be asked the question in the Podesta leaks that was there, where she was basically, her staff was pushing various organizations or various people like Jimmy Kimmel or other shows to ask her about the UFOs. Ask me about UFOs. And the staff was basically excited when that answer came back and she knocked it out of the park. I'm going to look again. And they were like, yes, she's going to look again. She's awesome. And so it was that, right? And so let's say for the moment that you had elements in the government that wanted to get this information out and they needed a push. And they thought to themselves, Hillary Clinton seems to be on board for this. And not just needed a push, they had their hands on documents. They had their hands on research that had been taking place. At that point, Harry Reid had been studying the UFO issue, or at the very least have set up a black budget project to study the UFO issue. It wasn't just UFOs. It was poltergeists. It was all sorts of stuff. It was very bizarre behavior. Skinwalker Ranch and that research was a larger part of the project. They were trying to figure out whether the poltergeist activity that was at that ranch that they could prove, even though they couldn't figure out what it was because it was defying explanation,
Right.
if that has anything to explain the other. Now, I never bring up Skinwalker Ranch because Skinwalker Ranch is too weird. But the problem
It's
is...
so weird.
Yeah, it's too weird. It's
I
very
love
weird.
it. It's very weird.
It goes beyond the UFO stuff, honestly. And the DIA agents and whatnot. Like, Bob Bigelow had an interview recently. Bob Bigelow was the contractor, the CEO that got the contract to study all of this stuff. Luis Elizondo was only studying a part of it, a small part of it. The larger part was potentially craft, even though Bigelow can't say that, won't say that, and would dodge and dance like anybody's business the moment that you got to get there. And it's like, did you see craft? Or do we have craft? There are craft. But he has to say this stuff like in a very particular way. He's weirded out by it. But Bigelow kind of makes this point about, well, let's go back to Clinton for a moment. As Clinton tries to get through, you have these various factors who wants to get this stuff out. They have videos. The videos get released. Now, this starts with Tom DeLonge somehow, with a rock star getting his hands on
the TikTok UFO, because that was
it gets so bizarre. Luis Elizondo has something to do with it.
Acknowledging that they had taken those videos, right? The videos
Exactly.
have been circulating around, and then
And people were like, "Oh, those things are fake," and then then the Pentagon eventually comes out and says, "Yes, those things are real." Now, you've had Luis Elizondo and all of these people doing news briefings and everything else. But think for the moment, if it wasn't Trump that was in office. Let's say everything happened the exact same way with the exception of one thing. Clinton was in office. And keep in mind, they thought Clinton was a lock. They thought she was going to win that full lock, stock, and barrel. And so think of it, if Clinton was in office, all of that information comes out. The New York Times piece comes out, Washington Post, CNN. You have all of these people who are in the airplanes going on, having interviews on Tucker Carlson and on CNN. And they're saying, this is what I saw. This is where I was. And Hillary, at that moment, would say, we need to open up the books. And I have all of this pressure that's pushing me to do that. Donald Trump would never do that. And that's the catch. The belief was that Clinton was going to be there to usher in this new age by opening this stuff up to whatever degree she was going to open this stuff up. Now, what's happened, though, it goes into Trump. Congress is getting briefings. Trump gets briefings. They're not seeing the fuzzy videos, according to Luis Elizondo. He's saying, no, they're getting...
And Luis Elizondo, just going to, so people know we're talking about, he's the former director of the Pentagon's unit that studied UFOs, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. That was also something that was only recently made public in the last couple of years, I believe.
Exactly. Right. When he first came out. Because he quit the project the moment it came out and joined To the Stars Academy, which is Tom DeLonge's organization. And you had a bunch of other spooks that joined Tom DeLonge's organization. All of this stuff was orchestrated on some level to be in this particular way, to get it across in this particular way. And it just so happened that Trump was in office. Now, the wild part is, though, that these guys were taking congressmen secretly to get briefings. And the congressmen would be like, oh, my God. Which is what they were. The things that they were being shown, it wasn't like the TikTok videos. It were things that were up close. Luis Elizondo said like 15 feet at some points. And honestly, the DIA agents that were dealing with Skinwalker Ranch, stuff was following them home. Like, it was very strange stuff that was going on. But in the case of the UFO stuff, no, those people were coming out. They were getting briefings. Congress members were coming back saying, we need to know what this is. And so they have this very large project now that all of this information is supposed to be dumped into Congress. And Congress is supposed to create this report. Now, the problem is that there are people who don't want this report out. There are some military people who are terrified. There's some people who think that they were trying to open up the gates of hell and that these things are demons. And so they don't necessarily want to deal with them. Seriously, I'm not joking with this. Bob Bigelow was basically saying, they shut down the project on some level by diverting the money. And more importantly, the person who was ahead of that project, who was at pretty high ranking in regards to military, well, he is now several ranks lower in regards to the person who put him in. And that guy has no staff, which means he has to do this huge project basically by himself. It's a way of trying to kill the project, or a way of trying to kill the information from coming out.
Let me ask you
go for it.
about the implications of that. because that's something I saw that you shared. It was a conversation with Luis Elizondo and a couple of other people on the, I think, Somewhere in the Skies podcast. And they were talking about the dangers of partial disclosure, which is not something I had thought about before. And I thought was sort of interesting because it has been a remarkable amount of disclosure with regard to, UFO, like just unexplained phenomena in the skies, right? Like that is a reality. It's a reality that these videos are out there. It's a reality, at least, you take the government's word for it and take people working on its word for it, that they don't know what they are.
Take the Pentagon, the pallets. It's because to me, it's not just the videos, it's the pallets. Like when the pallet is in the air flying on 9/11 to keep this country safe. Right. And then that's the same guy that's flying, watching the UFO for like X number of minutes. He's like, it's a piece of technology. The thing is moving really fast, etc. And if you notice, they never ask what's in it. They never ask that. Yeah. They never go there.
They're just saying, what is this? We don't know what's going on. Well, let me ask you though. So they're talking about, look, there has been all this disclosure. We do know now that these videos are legit. They weren't doctored. They weren't made up. They come from the Navy. This conversation between the pilots is real. Yes, we had a unit that was investigating it. Yes, this guy was ahead of it. And they're like, okay, if you sort of stop at this midpoint, you open up all this space for people to take a little bit of information and run with it and create something fantastical. It was not a danger that had sort of come to my mind before, and I wonder what you think of it. Is it dangerous to have a little bit of this information out there?
We had on Steve Bassett, and Stephen Bassett, he is far more optimistic than I am. I've gotten cynical doing politics. Like I've told you before, I was holding the thing saying "Space Brother" on the top of the roof, like, yes, come and get me. And after starting doing politics, far less that way. Like Marco Rubio is the one who was talking to the news about this. Think about that. Marco Rubio is talking about UFOs. Do you trust Marco Rubio to be honest and just about matters of, that are in the black, that you can't see anything about? Rubio said the most honest thing in the world. He said, I hope it's not us. Meaning, I hope it's not from this planet. Because if it is from this planet, we're screwed. That was his point. He saw that if he was getting briefed, like all of these guys were getting briefed. That's kind of my point. The stuff that they were seeing is the thing that instigated the gyration of, we need to know what this is. It was freaking these guys out. These guys are hardcore right-wingers that we're being invaded. Our skies are being invaded. And I am not even of the mind to believe that Trump's Space Force didn't come from that. Like him being briefed. I mean, now, like thinking about it now, I mean, Tucker Carlson, stuff that he was saying, the things that they were saying behind the scenes, yeah, potentially. But dropping context is a big deal. Like, it's something that is entirely in the black, exopolitics. And you say, all right, I'm going to give you this much information. That's all you need to know. And maybe it's to look like it's a threat. Maybe it's to say that, hey, we need to be able to defend ourselves. Hey, this cow got attacked. Maybe they could attack human beings with this ray gun. We need to protect ourselves with this ray gun. Like all sorts of stuff. They can drop the research that shows that the missile sites were an issue. Meaning when they shut off the missile sites, that's a signal, that's a sign, that's a message. Like, it's like, we're not saying anything to you. We're not going to shoot you or kill you or anything, but we're going to show displeasure with this particular device. And now we're going to leave. Like, it's stuff like that. Like, if either we need to understand it contextually. And I think part of the problem is, can the country live under threat? And can it live under stuff that it doesn't know? And if it can't live like that, if the government thinks that they can't handle the truth, whatever the truth is, there's something out there, we don't necessarily know what it is. Maybe we do know what it is. Maybe it's hostile, maybe it's not. Whether it's hostile or not, we can't do anything about it. Either way, we have no capacity to do anything about it, so we keep it a secret. It can be something as straightforward as that.
That's a compelling description of what this process has been. I also wonder, I'm sure you saw in January nearly 3,000 pages of CIA documents about its findings on UFOs were made public in this online searchable format. And so I was wondering if there have been any revelations from these documents. I think the documents themselves were out in a limited way, but now they're online. You can search them. Is there, have you heard of anything big coming out of those documents being available And also the fact that, the government's been looking into these sightings and other phenomena for a very long time.
Very long time. We're talking about decades. Brennan said something about this, answered this question, and he gave this kind of really thoughtful answer, making this point like, we kind of assume that life is going to look a certain way or behave a particular way, and maybe there could be something that's in a different dimension or is a part of nature that we just don't quite get, don't quite understand. And it's like, whoa, Brennan, what does Brennan know? And it's like, it's just so wild. Like, because if Brennan, the Defense Intelligence Agency contacted Bob Bigelow. And when he contacted Bob Bigelow, they wanted to see Skinwalker Ranch. And Bob Bigelow says, sure, I'll take you to Skinwalker Ranch. They go to Skinwalker Ranch. There's a meeting there. They have a conversation. The DIA agent gets up. They walk out. And he asks Bigelow, did you see anything? And Bigelow said, what are you talking about? He says, did you see anything? The agent basically was seeing something floating around the room. And it freaked him out enough where he went to get research, which was one of the things that initiated them getting the research project to study that place at all. And that project was able to expand up to the point of the UFO stuff. I don't know how they were able to get those two things together. But Bigelow was heavy into this subject for a long time. And so he was like chomping at the bit to get his hands on it. I guess my point is, it's possible that Brennan is talking about stuff that they were finding, the research. Because they were doing research on all sorts of stuff. Like, they were doing poltergeist activity. They were doing it on, like, trying to figure out if you put one camera at another camera, one camera gets dismantled, and yet the other camera doesn't see anything. It was very strange stuff that was taking place. And they were doing research on electrogravitics, electromagnetism, gravity, warp drive. Oh, man. It looked stuff like from Star Trek. It was so wild.
Yeah, I gotta say, listeners, if you are into, animal mutilation, aliens, shapeshifters, poltergeists, ghosts, and literally any kind of phenomena you can imagine, and you haven't heard of Skinwalker Ranch,
it's so.
Look it up.
Yeah, I never used to talk about it. I never talked about it. If you notice on the show, because it was too weird. Like, it's so bizarre. And I had the opportunity to hear Bob Bigelow talk about it, and I was like, oh my God, there's no way to explain this to anybody. Like, the UFO thing makes more sense, right? Like, it's like, if that's where you are.
UFOs, absolutely. Space is, infinite, other life out there. That I find that not at all difficult to sort of grasp and accept.
The Skinwalker Ranch stuff is out there.
Different level, but still fascinating. Jamarl, it probably is still too weird, but we're all misfits here. So it's good to have you on to talk about it for a little bit. We're going to let you go. Jamarl Thomas of Fault Lines here on Radio Sputnik and the Progressive Soapbox. Where should our listeners go to find more of what you do?
On Fault Lines, of course, we're on the radio station, 7 to 10 a.m. And also my own channel, the Progressive Soapbox, or Jamarl Thomas in YouTube, in the search box.
Absolutely. Great talking to you again, Jamarl. We'll talk to you soon.
Guys.
Have fun tomorrow on the show. And of course, you're listening to Political Misfits on Radio Sputnik. We're live in DC, and we'll be back right after this.
A return to Political Misfits. I haven't been on that show since I left. It is a very weird feeling to be there. But they've been on my show, so I kind of want to be on their show. Skinwalker Ranch is freaky, man. Yeah, Skinwalker Ranch is freaky. What's his name? I mean, like the Bob Bigelow interview, if you are interested in that stuff at all, that is the interview to watch. And Bigelow non-passionately explains the research that he was doing. And they had all of these government agents and everything else working at the place, studying the place. It was a laboratory. They found this kind of weird behavior that was repeatable. And not just repeatable, where you could have a large number of people who could see it. And they would set up all of these different experiments. And they would say, all right, let's cut off all the lights and let's see what happens here with cameras all around the room. And pictures would be taken, stuff, and you would be seeing all of this stuff flying around the room and whatnot. But the moment that you tried to repeat the experiment, you could never do it. And not just never do it, it would fuck with them. Like, there was one time, like the camera thing. The camera thing is one of the weirder things. Like, they point one camera at another camera. One camera gets taken apart, and this camera sees nothing of the process of the thing getting taken apart. He talks about, like, little, like, tunnels of light and all this other stuff. It's weird. I never go there because it's too weird. It's too weird. Like, people don't have a framing of it. UFO, they get. Aliens, they get. If they saw a gray alien, they'd be like, oh, gray alien. they would get it, right? It's some kind of activity that is fucking with people. That's more difficult. It's more difficult. But yeah, it was fun. We got to putt around about UFOs. John Novak, the way he was going to try to prove life after death, automatic writing, crickets. Thank you. Yeah. Bob Bigelow. Well, he was putting his money into it. He did put his money into it. And look, there's another cat, Tom Campbell. Tom Campbell is a NASA physicist. At least he used to be a NASA physicist. He's more like a guru at this point. He wrote this book called My Big Toe. It's basically my theory of everything. And his thought is all of this stuff is a matrix and so forth. But the way he wants to try to prove it has to do with the double slit experiment and trying to create it in a way that doesn't allow an escape. Meaning, his point is the only way that experiment works is if this is not a reality in the way that we think reality is. We found kind of a quirk in the system. By not necessarily making a choice, the system at this particular scale is fuzzy. It doesn't exist yet. It's a smattering of probabilities. And your physical matter, reality eyes, see it as a wave. There's a wave there. Does it do that if it was solid? And that's Tom Campbell's point. Tom Campbell's point is, if this is, it's solid to us, yes. But if this is what we think it is, when we think solid, we don't mean like projected reality. When we say solid, we're thinking of that rock is a rock is a rock. But think about how weird that is. And is there really a difference between that rock being a rock being a rock, or that rock being from a projected universe that just so happens to show that rock that is entirely a rock in every particular way to you? Is there really a difference? I suppose one is projected, the other is not, so one could feel like it's superior to the other sorts. But I'm not sure if there's a difference. And if I got to be honest, it's weirder for that rock to be a rock. So I'll just leave it. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. Thanks all.